We have achieved so much together and continue to learn so much from each other. Within the WHO regions, but especially across WHO regions, there is so much we can offer each other, so much we can learn from each other, so much that we can achieve both through our similarities, but especially through our differences. That the future for our organization and for our citizens cannot but be a bright one. I thank you for your tireless efforts to bring health, physical and mental well-being to the citizens of your countries and for your support for WHO on its 95th anniversary. Thank you very much, and I wish you the best of the rest of this plenary together. Thank you so much. Thank you once more. We shall now go on with the agenda and consider item 1.4, which is the adoption of the agenda, allocation of items to the main committees. Thank you very much. The General Committee has examined the provisional agenda for the 76th World Health Assembly, which is document A76-1 Revision 1, along with a proposal for a supplementary agenda item contained in document A76-1 Revision 1 Edition 1, entitled Inviting Taiwan to Participate in the World Health Assembly as an Observer. Let us now turn to the proposal for a supplementary agenda item, which can be found in document A76-1 Revision 1 Edition 1, as we've just announced. The General Committee met yesterday evening, and recommended not to include this item on the agenda. To facilitate our work, I would like to propose to the plenary that we address this matter to a process that has been proven already constructive when this issue arose in past sessions of the Health Assembly. Through this process, viewpoints can be expressed and the good order of the Health Assembly can be well maintained. Accordingly, I propose that the debate be structured as follows. 2 delegations will take the floor for 3 minutes each, and I repeat, strictly for 3 minutes each, in support of the General Committee's recommendation not to include this item on the agenda. And then 2 delegations will also take the floor again for 3 minutes each in opposition to the General Committee's recommendation not to include this item on the agenda. Furthermore, following how previous such 2+2 proposals for the debate have been held in the past, I would propose that, following the 4 interventions, the Health Assembly decides, as arranged with those most closely involved, not to include this item on the agenda. As this would be a 2+2, I would take it that it is understood that no additional requests for the floor on this matter will be put forward. Again, to be clear, it is understood that there will be no additional requests from the floor. Finally, I would like to express my appreciation for the cooperation received in the efforts to arrange and to reach this agreement in the form that I am proposing today. It has been the subject of extensive consultation in the run-up to the World Health Assembly. My understanding is that this proposal, again, has the full support of those most closely involved, as well as the support of Member States generally, who have, through an informal white paper, been acquainted with it. Given these understandings, given the sensitivities, and given the importance of a predictable and orderly process, I take it my proposal is agreeable to the Health Assembly. Thank you. Accordingly, I would like to give the floor first to the delegate of China. China, the floor is yours.
Mr. President, China firmly supports the General Committee's recommendation not to include the proposal of Taiwan's WHO participation in the agenda. I want to emphasize that there is only one China in the world. The PRC government is the sole legal government representing the whole of China. Taiwan is an inalienable part of China's territory. UNGA Resolution 2758 has already completely resolved the issue of China's representation in the UN. China's Taiwan region's participation in WHO activities must be handled in accordance with the One China principle. This is also the fundamental principle affirmed in the UNGA Resolution 2758 and the WHO Resolution 25.1. The DPP authorities refuses to acknowledge that both sides of the Taiwan Strait belong to One China, having unilaterally damaged and abandoned the political foundation for the Taiwan region to participate in WHA. The DPP authorities claim that not participating in the WHA will harm the well-being of the people of Taiwan region, resulting in the so-called gap in international anti-pandemic efforts. But they fail to mention that the facts that on the condition of the One China principle, medical experts from the Taiwan region can participate in WHO technical activities, and there is a focal point for the IHR in the Taiwan region, which is running effectively. The real reason is because they see it as a potential way to expand international space for China. At present, global health is in a critical period of reform. Relevant technical outcomes of WHO are of great significance for improving global health governance. However, a small number of countries disregard the common interests of member states insisting on submitting this proposal, having severely disrupted the Assembly. Recently, over 100 countries have expressed their position to stand for the One China principle and oppose Taiwan's participation in the WHA. So this fully shows that One China principle has international support and represents the prevailing trend. Any attempt to use pandemic for Taiwan independence is doomed to fail. So we suggest that the President will take decisive decision not to recommend this proposal to be included in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. I would now like to give the floor to the delegate of Eswatini.
Thank you, Mr. President. Taiwan previously participated in the World Health Assembly meetings as an observer and provided valuable expertise that informed the WHO discussions. However, Taiwan has been excluded from the WHO since 2017 due to political considerations, which has hindered Taiwan's ability to receive assistance from the WHO and contribute to global health efforts. The World Health Assembly facilitated dialogue among countries to chart an effective course to end the COVID-19 pandemic. Discussions such as these should exclude no one, especially not Taiwan with its 23 million people, who successfully united to overcome the pandemic and set an example for the world. The WHO Constitution, which entered into force in 1948, states that the health of all people is fundamental to the attainment of peace and security, and is dependent on the fullest cooperation of individuals and states. This is as relevant today as it was 75 years ago. The COVID-19 pandemic demonstrated that the world must work together in order to overcome collective health challenges. WHO coordinates global health efforts, and it is important for it to involve all stakeholders, especially such as Taiwan, which makes significant contribution to global public health. I thank you, sir.
Thank you. I would now like to give the floor to the delegate of Pakistan. Pakistan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pakistan supports China's statement on the matter of Taiwan's participation as an observer at the World Health Assembly. We reiterate our full support for One China principle and China's efforts to safeguard its sovereignty and territorial integrity. The UN General Assembly Resolution 2758 and World Health Assembly Resolution 25.1 provide the World Health Organization with a strong legal basis to address this issue within the framework of One China principle. And we urge all parties to respect China's position in this regard. Mr. President, as we understand, the channels of communication and cooperation for Taiwan region's participation in the WHO technical field are smooth and open. Under the precondition of abiding by a One China principle, experts from the region can participate in relevant WHO technical meetings. And this has been reported by the WHO, and the information is available in terms of news reports on its website. We also welcome the continued cooperation between China's central government and experts from Taiwan region during the COVID-19 pandemic, including through timely technical information sharing. Under the current regulation, Taiwan can exchange information, including reporting on health emergencies, with the WHO and other parties without any obstacle. Mr. President, divisive measures like this agenda not only undermine the work of this important forum, but also run counter to the fundamental principles of the United Nations Charter. WHA is a technical forum, and WHO is a specialized UN agency. Therefore, bringing up matters of such political and sensitive nature takes the focus away from other important health issues and runs counter to the principle of state sovereignty and international solidarity. The aim of this Health Assembly should be to cater to the global health challenges, including the continuing impact of COVID-19 pandemic, inequity in global health architecture, and adverse health impacts resulting directly from climate change. We should focus on strengthening multilateral cooperation to address these challenges and improve health governance, rather than delving into matters that have already been resolved. I thank you.
Thank you. And now I would like to give the floor to the delegate of the Marshall Islands. You have the floor.
Mr. President, Mr. Director General, Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, as sovereign member states and stakeholders, we all must adhere to and respect the WHO Constitution, which states that the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of health is one of the fundamental rights of every human being without distinction of race, religion, political belief, economic or social condition. Indeed, the WHO should live up to its vision by recognizing the fact that Taiwan's 23 million people share with the rest of the humankind the right to participate in the global health security system. The position of my government remains firm and definite. This Assembly must discuss inviting Taiwan to participate in the WHA as an observer. Most, if not all of us, would be aware that Taiwan had been invited to this Assembly as an observer for the 8 consecutive years from 2009 to 2016. With the COVID-19 pandemic now abating and dialogue on strengthening health systems worldwide is accelerating, Taiwan should not be left out. Taiwan can surely help, and its inclusion will make the world healthier, more sustainable, and more equitable. The WHO must put people first and not politics. Ensuring the fundamental health rights of every individual requires the WHO's effective engagement with all relevant partners. Taiwan's inclusion in the WHO, especially its substantive engagement in related mechanisms such as the IHR, WEPRO, GISRS, would greatly enhance the global health system, especially in the joint fight against communicable disease. In the spirit of the SDGs, no country should be left behind, most certainly not our brothers and sisters in Taiwan, who have made significant strides and have provided meaningful contributions to global public health. Yesterday, we heard from one of our youth advocates, Mambe Masaria, and she stated, I quote, WHO has 75 years of improving health, but it will take each of us to walk the talk. Listen to the call and mean it when we join hands on the journey to health for all, end quote. Without Taiwan's participation, this respected organization will never deliver what is requested from us by the 1.8 billion youths. The power in your words and presentation is a reminder for world leaders to set standards and act on what we must do as referenced in our theme this year, saving lives, driving health for all. I urge the WHO and all relevant stakeholders once again to support Taiwan's inclusion and return to this assembly as an observer, including its full participation in WHO meetings, mechanisms, and activities. Kamuldala, and I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Now that we have heard the 4 interventions on the subject, I take it that the Health Assembly accepts the recommendation of the General Committee not to include the proposed supplementary agenda item on the agenda. I see that is the case. Accordingly, the recommendation of the General Committee is therefore approved. Before proceeding further, I should express my appreciation for the understanding and cooperation of all Member States in the orderly and predictable handling of this item, which furthers the good order and effectiveness of the Health Assembly and the principles enshrined in the Constitution of the WHO. Let us now turn to the adoption of the agenda itself. The General Committee recommended deleting the following items from the provisional agenda. Item 4, which is invited speakers. Item 5, admission of any new members and associate members. Item 19.6, special arrangements for arrears. Item 19.7, assessment of new members and associate members. Item 25, agreements with intergovernmental organizations. Am I correct in assuming that it is agreed to delete these items? I see no objections, so it is so decided. The General Committee also decided to recommend to the plenary that the 76th World Health Assembly close no later than Tuesday, 30th May, of course, of this year. May I therefore assume that the Assembly agrees to adopt the provisional agenda as contained in document A76-1, revision 1 as amended? I see no objections. It is therefore so decided. The agenda is hereby adopted. Document A76-1, revision 2, reflecting the changes in the agenda, will be distributed tomorrow morning to delegates. This concludes our consideration of the agenda. Our program of work for the remainder of the day will be item 2. The report of the Executive Board on its 151st and 152nd sessions and on its 6th special session, followed by agenda item 3, which is the address by the Director General. The address of the Director General will be followed by the general discussion on item 3 and the convening of the first meeting of Committee A. The Committee on Credentials will meet today at 2 o'clock, and the second meeting of Committee A will start at 2:30. To help facilitate interpretation and preparation of official records, delegates are kindly requested to provide the Secretariat, before the plenary, advance copies of the statements either through email on interpret@who.int or to give a paper copy of the document to the officers in the room at least 30 minutes in advance. This does not, of course, prevent delegates from making changes on delivery. It will, however, facilitate clarity and accuracy with translation in all languages. Under subject and the top of the statement, please state the name of your country or group that you are representing, the meeting, when, say, for instance, plenary, Committee A or Committee B, and the relevant agenda item. In order to facilitate the organization of the week, I would like to propose, and this is a procedure followed on previous occasions, that the order of the list of speakers for the discussion under agenda item 3 be strictly adhered to, and that further requests be added to the list in the order in which they are received. I would also like to propose that the list of speakers be closed tomorrow, Tuesday, at 10 a.m. I presume that these proposals are acceptable to everyone. Thank you. I see no objections, so it is so decided. On Tuesday, 23rd of May, at 9 in the morning, the 4th plenary will meet to consider the report of the Committee on Credentials and the continuation of the general discussion under agenda item 3. Committee A will hold its third and fourth meetings in parallel to the plenary sessions. At 2:30 in the afternoon, the fifth plenary will reconvene and continue the general discussion under item 3. On Wednesday, 24th May, Committee A will hold its fifth and sixth meetings. Following the closure of item 3 in the plenary, Committee B will commence its first meeting and consider item 17, including election of the vice chairs and rapporteur. This will be followed by item 19. At its second meeting on Wednesday at 2:30 in the afternoon, Committee B will consider agenda item 18, health conditions in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem and in the occupied Syrian Golan. The General Committee will also hold its second meeting on Wednesday at 17:30 to draw up a list of members for the purpose of the annual election of members entitled to designate a person to serve on the Executive Board and to consider any change in the programme of works of the Health Assembly. Does the plenary agree to these proposals? Thank you. I see no objection. It is so decided. Let us now move to agenda item 2, which is the report of the Executive Board on its 151st and 152nd sessions. I have the pleasure in inviting to the rostrum the Chair of the Executive Board, Dr. Kirsten Vesna-Petric, Director General of Public Health Directorate at the Ministry of Health of Slovenia. Dr. Petric, whom I know you have been extremely active during these last years, I ask you to take the floor.
Mr. President, Dr. Tedros, Director General, Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. In today's statement, I will summarize the highlights of the 151st and 152nd session of the 6th special session of the Executive Board. The agendas of our Executive Board meetings were very full, and I will not attempt to cover everything, but I encourage you to read the full report contained in document A76/2. During the 151st session held on 30th May 2022, the Board considered 14 items and sub-items, adopting 12 decisions. The Board decided to establish the Standing Committee on Health Emergency Prevention, Preparedness and Response, and also to establish the Agile Member States Task Group on strengthening WHO's budgetary, programmatic, and financing governance. In addition, the Board accepted the recommendation of the Program Budget and Administration Committee, PBAC, and noted the reports on amendments to the financial regulations and financial rules, as well as the annual report on evaluation and the report on and review of hosted partnerships. The Board also appointed members to fill the 7 vacant positions on the PBAC and 5 on the selection panels or foundation committees. During its 152nd session, held from 30th January to 7th of February, the Board considered 55 items and sub-items and adopted 7 resolutions and 29 decisions. In this report to EB, the Director General discussed the priorities for health and the proposed program budget for 2024 to 2025. Responses from the Board included constructive guidance and advice, as well as discussion of the impact of COVID-19. In relation to the first pillar on universal health coverage, we have discussed different aspects of reorienting health systems to primary health care, as a resilient foundation for universal health coverage. We have also discussed preparations for a high-level meeting on the UN General Assembly in New York this September. The board recommended the adoption of 4 related resolutions to this assembly. The board also welcomed and supported the draft update menu of policy options and cost-effective interventions for the prevention and control of NCDs, and recommended that this assembly endorse the menu. On the draft global strategy on prevention and control of infections, the board decided that informal consultations with member states would continue with a view to adopting the global strategies at this assembly. Now, turning to the second pillar on health emergency, the board discussed the report on strengthening the global architecture for health emergency preparedness, response and resilience, including 10 proposals and 5 core systems. The board also discussed the report on WHO's work in health emergencies. Regarding the report on the implementation of resolution WHA 75.11, it was agreed that the Secretariat would continue to work on the report for consideration also at this assembly. On the Global Health for Peace initiative, the board welcomed the progress being made on developing the roadmap and noted that additional consultations would be needed before the roadmap could be submitted to this assembly. Regarding polio, the board noted the reports on eradication, transition planning, and polio post-certification. Under the third pillar on general health and well-being, the board discussed the development of WHO's first framework for achieving well-being. The board welcomed the strategic directions and the focus on monitoring with the report on well-being and health promotion. The board also discussed the report on social determinants of health, including WHO's draft operational framework for measuring, assessing, and addressing the social determinants of health and health inequities. The board considered drowning in the broader context of determinants of health and health inequities and recommended that this assembly adopts a resolution on accelerating action on drowning prevention. Regarding the United Nations Decade of Action on Nutrition, 2016 to 2025, the board noted the report and recommended the adoption of the resolution at this assembly on accelerating efforts for preventing micronutrient deficiencies and their consequences. On behavioral science for better health, the board recommended that this assembly adopts a resolution that promotes the use of behavioral sciences approaches in both member states and the work of the Secretariat. On the last pillar, focusing on an effective and efficient WHO, the board had several important discussions on budget and finance, governance, management, and staffing matters, and I will just mention a few of them. After an extensive and constructive discussion on budget and finance, the board concurred with the guidance of the PBAC on the financing and implementation of the program budget 2022 to 2023 and the outlook on financing of the program budget 2024 to 2025, as well as on the 13th General Program of Work 2019 to 2025, the scale of assessments for 2024 to 2025, and the sustainable financing of WHO vis-à-vis the feasibility of the replenishment mechanism. On governance matters, the board again concurred with the guidance of the PBAC. We noted the report of the Agile Member States Task Group and endorsed the Secretariat's implementation plan on reform. The board also noted the report on involvement of non-state actors in WHO governing bodies and adopted an amended decision on constituency statements, including a request for report on the implications for statements delivered by observers to be submitted to EB 153. On management matters, the board concurred with PBAC again and noted the report on prevention of sexual exploitation, abuse and harassment, commending the Secretariat's work in this area. On staffing matters, the board appointed Dr. Gerbas Barbosa de Silva, Jr. as Regional Director for the Americas, expressing its profound gratitude and appreciation to Dr. Carissa Etienne for her invaluable contribution to the work of WHO and of PAHO, especially her courageous service in the face of the COVID-19 emergency. During its sixth special session held on 6th of March, the board considered the report of the Secretariat and decided to terminate the appointment of the Regional Director for the Western Pacific, and noted the suggested timetable for considering the appointment of the new Regional Director at its 150th session in January 2024. Reflecting on these meetings of the board, I would like to thank the board members for supporting me and engaging with the different initiatives we introduced together to make our discussions more efficient. I would also like to thank Dr. Tedros and his team, most of them sitting here with us, to diligently support us in doing so. The board has met at its retreat twice, in November and in March, to discuss possible improvements and worked hand in hand with the Agile Member State Task Group in this regard. The guiding questions contained in the Secretariat reports have helped us to better focus on items discussed in a short time given. By using written statements that were often posted in advance, we have also made possible to share national experiences and made contributions of non-state actors available for us EB members to consider before the discussions took place. Together, we are working towards making the meetings of Executive Board more meaningful and more dynamic. Thank you to all of you for this. This brings us to a close of my report on the 151st and 152nd session and the 6th special session of the Executive Board. Mr. President, the other members of the Executive Board and I would like to convey our highest regards to you and indicate our readiness to respond to any questions or clarifications you may need. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vesna, for your excellent report. Once more, I take this opportunity to pay tribute to the work of the Executive Board and in particular to express our appreciation and our warm thanks to the outgoing members who have contributed very actively to the work of the Board. This, therefore, concludes our review of item 2 of our agenda. Let us now turn to item 3 of the agenda, which is the address of Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, Director General. I shall now invite the Director General to the rostrum. Dr. Tedros, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Honorable Chris Fenn, Deputy Prime Minister of Malta and President of the World Health Assembly, congratulations on your election and look forward to working with you closely, Your Excellency. And Excellencies, Ministers, Excellencies, Heads of Delegation, dear colleagues and friends, as you know, just under 3 weeks ago, I declared an end to COVID-19 as a public health emergency of international concern. It was a moment of relief and reflection. It's encouraging to see life return to normal, to be able to hug a friend, to travel freely, and to meet together. We have been hostages of this virus for some time. So I think, as I said, it's a relief. But at the same time, many of us continue to carry grief in our hearts. Grief over those we have lost. Grief at the terrible toll the pandemic has taken on families, communities, societies, and economies. And grief that it didn't need to be this way. It didn't need to be this way. In particular, the pandemic has taken a heavy toll on mental health, including on many of our own staff, who, like so many health workers around the world, have experienced severe stress and burnout. The pandemic has confronted us with unprecedented challenges, and it has also demonstrated what your WHO is capable of, what our WHO is capable of. Throughout the pandemic, your WHO has mobilized global expertise to provide technical and logistical tools to support you in your efforts to save lives. And through the ACT Accelerator, WHO and our partners delivered nearly 2 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccine, as well as tests, therapeutics, oxygen, PPE, and other medical supplies. The end of COVID-19 as a global health emergency is not the end of COVID as a global health threat. Earlier this month, the Secretariat published the 4th edition of the Global Strategic Preparedness and Response Plan for COVID-19, which outlines critical actions for countries in 5 core areas. The threat of another variant emerging that causes new surges of disease and death remains. And the threat of another pathogen emerging with even deadlier potential remains. And pandemics are far from the only threat we face. In a world of overlapping and converging crises, an effective architecture for health emergency preparedness and response must address emergencies of all kinds. This year's high-level meeting on pandemic preparedness and response is a valuable opportunity for leaders to chart a clear path forward towards that future. We cannot kick this can down the road. If we do not make the changes that must be made, then who will? And if we do not make them now, and when? When the next pandemic comes knocking, and it will, we must be ready to answer decisively, collectively, and equitably. The COVID-19 pandemic had significant implications for the health-related targets in the Sustainable Development Goals and each of the triple billion targets. More than 1 billion more people are now enjoying better health and well-being since 2018, but progress is insufficient to reach the related targets of the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. On universal health coverage, we have made progress and closed gaps, and since 2018, 477 million more people are enjoying the benefits of universal health coverage. But on the current trends, fewer than half the world's population will be covered by the end of the SDG era in 2030, meaning we must at least double the pace. And on emergencies, the COVID-19 pandemic has shown that it's not 1 billion people, but 8 billion people who need to be better protected. The pandemic has blown us, of course, but it has shown us why the SDGs must remain our North Star and why we must pursue them with the same urgency and determination with which we countered the pandemic. Despite the many setbacks we have faced, we also have many achievements of which to be proud of. Last week, the Secretariat published its results report for 2022 on the WHO website, presenting a comprehensive, detailed, and interactive account of our work with country stories from around the world. I commend it to you. It's impossible to do justice to the huge range of accomplishments in 2022, but the results report highlights key achievements that are symbolic of our work in all its diversity. I would like to highlight a few according to each of the 5 P's that I outlined at last year's Health Assembly: promoting, providing, protecting, powering, and performing for health. The first set of highlights relate to the first P, promoting health, by preventing disease and addressing its root causes. Addressing root causes is central, as you know. One of the key ways countries are doing that is through the use of health taxes in the fight against non-communicable diseases. Between 2017 and 2022, 133 member states increased or introduced a new health tax on products that harm health, including tobacco and sugary drinks. For example, with advocacy and technical support from WHO, Timor-Leste last year increased its tax on tobacco from $19 a kilogram to $50 a kilogram, and already this year has increased it again to $100 a kilogram, one of the largest tobacco tax increase achieved anywhere. Elsewhere, Mauritius and Finland introduced plain packaging. Oman will do so this year, and Tunisia increased health warnings to 70% of the front and back of tobacco packaging. Sierra Leone introduced some of the toughest tobacco control in the world. Ukraine expanded its smoke-free laws to ban the use of e-cigarettes and heated tobacco products in public places. And Kazakhstan introduced a new tax policy on heated tobacco products. Well done to each of these countries. We also see encouraging progress in eliminating industrially produced trans fat from the global food supply. Since we launched our Replace initiative in 2018, we have seen a 6-fold increase in the number of people protected by WHO-recommended policies on the use of industrially produced trans fat, from 550 million people to more than 3.7 billion. Just in the past 6 months, Bangladesh and Nigeria and the United Arab Emirates have implemented transfer policies, and Argentina, Egypt, Mexico, Paraguay, Philippines, and Ukraine are all preparing to introduce their own policies in the next 2 years. Many countries have also made impressive progress in reducing salt intake, a leading risk factor for cardiovascular disease. For example, over the past 10 years, Sri Lanka has reduced average salt consumption per capita by almost 20%, with support from WHO country office. On climate change, at COP27 last year, we launched the Alliance on Transformative Action on Climate Change and Health, which is supporting 65 countries to build climate-resilient and climate-friendly health systems. For example, with support from WHO, Guinea has begun assessing emissions from its health sector and is developing a plan to reduce them. In addition to all of this work, we continue to support countries to build healthier populations by increasing physical activity, improving road safety, fostering healthy aging, and so much more. Now to the second set of highlights, which relate to the second P, providing health, by reorienting health systems towards primary health care at the foundation of universal health coverage. The high-level meeting on UHC at the UN General Assembly in 2019 was a historic commitment by world leaders to realize the vision of health for all. Little did we know then that COVID-19 was just around the corner. The second high-level meeting on universal health coverage at this year's UN General Assembly is therefore a vital opportunity to refocus political attention and financial investments on accelerating progress. Strong primary health care is especially vital for delivering life-saving services, maternal and child health, including routine immunization. Between 2019 and 2021, an estimated 67 million children missed out on at least one essential vaccine, including 48 million children who missed out entirely. In response, WHO and our partners have launched the Big Catch-Up, a global effort to increase vaccination levels in children to at least pre-pandemic levels by the end of this year and to protect those who missed out. Despite the setbacks of the pandemic, many countries have continued to make progress in maternal and child health. DPR Korea, Indonesia, Maldives, Sri Lanka, and Thailand have all achieved SDG targets in reducing neonatal mortality, under 5 mortality, and the same 5 countries plus Bhutan also achieved the 2030 target of target on stillbirths. We're also proud to note the impressive progress countries have made in the promotion, protection, and support of breastfeeding. In 2022, 48% of children below 6 months were exclusively breastfed, getting close to the target of 50% set by the World Health Assembly. And we continue to support research to improve care for pregnant women. Last year, WHO reviewed evidence from trials in 20 countries that showed for the first time that immediate skin-to-skin care or kangaroo mother care can save almost 1/3 of children born preterm. And a WHO-led study showed that implementing a set of interventions at the same time instead of consecutively was able to reduce severe postpartum hemorrhage by 60% and reduce the chances of death. The new WHO compendium promoting the health of refugees and migrants experiences from around the world showcases dozens of country case examples from 44 4 member states that demonstrate real progress in addressing the unmet health needs of refugees. Over the long term, it's a priority to mainstream care for refugees and migrants into broader national plans supported by partnerships within countries and internationally. One of the most important investments in primary health care and universal health coverage is investments in health workers. 5 years ago, WHO projected a shortfall of 18 million health workers globally by 2030. That projected shortfall has now reduced to 10 million. But the African and Eastern Mediterranean region bear an increased share of the shortage. If we are to get anywhere near the SDG target of universal health coverage by 2030, we must close that gap by supporting all countries to build the health workforce they need. This is not something that each country does on its own. It's something countries must do together. We call on all countries to respect the global code of practice on the international recruitment of health personnel, and in particular, to protect the 55 countries on the recently updated support and safeguards list against international recruitment, which is draining those countries. We're also working hard to support countries to deliver lifelong training to continuously improve health worker competencies and quality of care. Just last month, we launched the global 25x25x25 campaign, which aims to provide access to basic emergency care training for 25% of nurses and midwives from 25 countries by the end of 2025. And with the strong support of France, we continue to achieve key milestones on the establishment of the WHO Academy, with our new building scheduled to be completed in 7 months and the first release of learning programs scheduled for later this year. This will have significant contribution to country capacity building. One of the most important elements of UHC is access to essential medical products. And 2022 saw the introduction and rollout of several important new tools. For tuberculosis, we launched new WHO guideline recommending the first all-oral treatment regime for multi-drug resistant tuberculosis, reducing treatment time from 18 months to 6 months. So far, 109 countries have started using this new regime based on WHO guidelines. But recognizing that we can only end TB with effective vaccines, earlier this year, we also established a ministerial-level TB Vaccine Acceleration Council to bring new vaccines to market as quickly as possible. If there is a will, there is a way. It was done for COVID, it can be done for TB. As we approach the high-level meeting on TB at this year's UN General Assembly, we're asking leaders to commit to concrete targets over the next 5 years on diagnosis, treatment, vaccine development, social protection, financing, and research and innovation. Last year, we also published new guidelines on the use of long-acting injections for preventing HIV, a potential game changer for those most at risk. So far, based on WHO guidelines, 6 countries have approved the use of long-acting injectables: Australia, Botswana, Malawi, South Africa, the United States, and Zimbabwe. And approval is underway in another 12 countries, plus the European Union. And following WHO's recommendation for widespread use of the RTS malaria vaccine in 2021, more than 1.5 million children have now received it in Ghana, Kenya, and Malawi. Among those vaccinated, we see a 30% reduction in severe malaria and a 10% drop in child death, we estimate that 1 death is prevented for every 200 children vaccinated. Put simply, the vaccine is changing the course of malaria. And as a malariologist, I'm really happy. At least 28 more countries in Africa are planning to introduce it, starting this year. A second vaccine is under review by WHO, and if recommended for youth, could help to close the gap between demand and supply and reduce costs, so more accessible than the one we have. As I said yesterday, vaccines are among the most powerful innovations in history. Vaccines have extinguished smallpox, pushed polio to near eradication, and tamed multiple other diseases. And vaccines are bringing the dream of eliminating cervical cancer within reach. Since WHO's call to action to eliminate cervical cancer in 2018, nearly 50 more countries introduced the HPV vaccine into their national immunization program, including 41 lower middle-income countries. We continue urging all countries to scale up services to meet the 90, 70, 90 targets by 2030. Even as we work to expand access to essential medicines and vaccines around the world, we're also continuing our work to protect precious medicines against the threat of antimicrobial resistance. For the first time, ministers of health and ministers of agriculture from around the world came together in Oman last year to agree on a target to reduce the use of antimicrobials in the agri-food system by 30% by 2030. Next year's high-level meeting on AMR will be crucial for mobilizing political and financial commitment to meet those and other targets. And I would like to use this opportunity to thank the Prime Minister of Barbados for her leadership of the Global Leadership Group, and also my friend, Deputy Prime Minister of Malta, Chris. Thank you so much indeed. Two leaders were really making a huge progress in our fight against AMR. So thank you so much, Prime Minister Miamotli, and thank you so much, Deputy Prime Minister Fern. Finally, as I mentioned earlier, the pandemic has exposed the huge burden of mental health. The WHO Special Initiative for Mental Health has supported 9 countries to increase access to mental health services for over 5.2 million people who previously were not able to access them. The third set of highlights relate to the third P, protecting health, by strengthening the global architecture for health emergency preparedness and response. In addition to COVID-19 and Mpox, last year WHO responded to 70 graded health emergencies, from floods in Pakistan to Ebola in Uganda, the war in Ukraine, cholera outbreaks in more than 30 countries, and complex emergencies in the Greater Horn of Africa, northern Ethiopia, and the Sahel. A crucial enabler of our response was the Contingency Fund for Emergencies, which was established following the West African Ebola outbreak in 2014 and 2015. Last year, the CFE released almost $90 million in as little as 24 hours to support the rapid response to emergencies. Already this year, we have allocated more than $37 million to fund our response to the earthquake in the Syrian Arab Republic and Turkey, the conflict in Sudan, and more. And our Dubai Logistics Hub in the United Arab Emirates processed almost 600 shipments to 90 countries. I would like to use this opportunity to thank all the support we're getting from the government of UAE, starting from His Highness the President. Last year, we also launched the first consolidated WHO Global Health Emergency Appeal, and in January, we launched this year's appeal for $22.5 billion. Just as we continue to respond to emergencies around the world, so we are continuing to work with member states and partners to strengthen the global architecture for health emergency preparedness and response. One of last year's key achievements in this regard was the establishment in November of the Pandemic Fund at the World Bank with technical leadership from WHO. The fund has initial budget of $1.6 billion and has already approved $300 million for the first round of funding to support catalytic and gap-filling financing for pandemic preparedness response around the world. The Pandemic Fund is just one of many initiatives that WHO and member states are undertaking to make our world safer against health emergencies. For enhanced accountability, the Universal Health and Preparedness Review. For enhanced surveillance, the WHO Hub for Pandemic and Epidemic Intelligence and the newly launched International Pathogen Surveillance Network. For an enhanced emergency response workforce, the Global Health Emergency Corps launched just last night with my good friend, Minister Lauterbach, and also Chris from Gates Foundation. For enhanced sharing of the biological sample, the WHO BioHub systems. For enhanced monitoring, the Global Preparedness Monitoring Board. For enhanced governance, amendments to the international health regulations. And for enhanced international cooperation, the Pandemic Accord, a generational commitment that we will not go back to the old cycle of panic and neglect that left our world vulnerable, but move forward with a shared commitment to meet shared threats with a shared response. That's why we say the Pandemic Accord is a generational agreement. A commitment from this generation is important because it's this generation that experiences how awful a small virus could be. The end of COVID-19 and mpox as public health emergencies of international concern means polio remains the only official global health emergency. After an all-time low of 5 wild poliovirus cases in 2021, we saw an increase last year with 20 cases in Pakistan, 2 in Afghanistan, and 8 in Mozambique. So for this year, there have been 3 reported cases of wild polio virus, including 1 from Pakistan and 2 from Afghanistan, just last week. WHO and our partners remain steadfastly committed to finishing the job of consigning polio to history. Last year, 3 million children previously inaccessible in Afghanistan received polio vaccines for the first time. And in October, donors pledged $2.6 billion to support the push for eradication. At the same time, as part of the polio transition, more than 50 countries have integrated polio assets to support immunization, disease detection, and emergency response. We must make sure that the significant investments in polio eradication do not die with polio, but are used to build the health systems to deliver the services that these communities so badly need. After all, we haven't truly helped a child if we protect her from polio, but she dies from measles. The fourth set of highlights relate to the fourth P, powering health, by harnessing the power of science, research, innovation, data, and partnership to deliver impact The mRNA hub in South Africa is a perfect example as part of our commitment to strengthen local production and enhance pandemic preparedness and response globally. I visited the mRNA hub in 2021, shortly after it was created, and had the opportunity to return for the official launch just 1 month ago. The progress is remarkable. The hub has now started transferring technology to manufacturers in 15 countries, supported by the Biomanufacturing Training Hub in the Republic of Korea, which has trained 300 staff in low and middle-income countries. The mRNA technology transfer program holds huge promise, not just for vaccines against COVID-19, but also for other diseases, including HIV, tuberculosis, malaria, and more. Vaccines are powerful tools, and so are data. Central to our efforts to track progress towards the health-related SDGs is our work to strengthen health information systems in countries, to generate and analyze reliable data to inform the best health policies and programs. One of last year's key data products was our estimate of excess mortality from COVID-19. Based on consultations with member states and working with partners across the United Nations and scientists around the world, we estimated 14.9 million excess deaths in 2020 and 2021. Last year, we completed the beta version of the World Health Data Hub, providing a single source for publishing health data. This is the first time in our history, making sure that WHO is one WHO. And during this assembly, we'll be launching Datadot, the public-facing portal of the World Health Data Hub. The final set of highlights relates to the fifth P, performing for health, by building a stronger and sustainably financed WHO. Your decision last year to transform WHO's financing model was a landmark towards strengthening and empowering WHO to fulfill its role as the leading and directing authority on global health. And thank you so much for that decision, and much gratitude from all of us in WHO. It's truly historic. Something that has been done for the first time in 75 years will bring a huge return to saving lives. In return, you asked the Secretariat to implement reforms on budgetary, programmatic, finance, and governance processes and accountability. Working with you, we developed the Secretariat Implementation Plan with 96 actions, which the Executive Board endorsed in January. But so far, we have implemented 42 actions, and 54 are ongoing. And I show you my commitment, or I assure you of my commitment to be more aggressive in implementing the remaining. We're also continuing in our efforts to transform the way this organization prevents and responds to sexual misconduct and to achieve gender equality. For the first time in WHO's history, we have reached overall gender parity for staff across all appointment types and categories of positions. At the end of last year, we held a global management meeting involving all our country representatives, regional directors, and headquarters leadership. The main outcome was the establishment of an action results group led by country representatives, which has developed an ambitious 100-day plan with 100 actions in 7 critical areas, including a core country authority and adequate financial and human resources, including through mobility. To support these efforts, I have squeezed $100 million from our budget to allocate to country offices and commit to sustain this. But in order to sustain this commitment, we look to member states to approve the 20% increase in assets contributions at this held assembly. Your secretariat is making the changes you asked for. Now we ask you to honor your commitment to increase assets contributions to enable us to deliver the long-term predictable programming in countries that will deliver the results we all want to see. Excellencies, many of my colleagues will be disappointed that I was not able to mention their areas of work. The highlights I have given you, though extensive, barely scratch the surface of everything we have achieved across the world in the past year, or everything that we're doing. Some of it makes the headlines. Most of it doesn't. Some of it attracts the attention of donors, and some of it doesn't. But in so many ways, and in so many places, your WHO is working to promote, provide, protect, power, and perform for health, the 5 Ps. I leave you with 3 requests. First, I urge every member state to work with the Secretariat, identify concrete ways to pick up the pace of progress on the 3 billion targets and health-related SDGs. Second, I urge every member state to engage constructively and urgently in negotiations on the pandemic accord and the international health regulations, so the world will never again have to face the devastation of a pandemic like COVID-19. And third, I ask you to support the increase in assets contribution and support the replenishment, the investment round in 2024. As we celebrate WHO's 75th anniversary, let us commit to do even more together to promote health, keep the world safe, and serve the vulnerable. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tedros. Before continuing our consideration of item 3, I would like to, separately from item 3, I would like to remind you of Rule 101 of the Rules of Procedure, which reads, at the commencement of each regular session of Health Assembly, the President shall request members desirous of putting forward suggestions regarding the annual election of those members to be entitled to designate a person to serve on the Executive Board, to place their suggestions before the General Committee. Such suggestions shall reach the Chair of the General Committee no later than 24 hours after the President has made the announcement in accordance with this rule, which is what I am doing now. On this occasion, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that in accordance with Articles 24 and 25 of the Constitution, the Executive Board shall consist of 34 persons designated as members. This year, the 10 vacancies to fill will be as follows. In the African region, 4 members. In the region of the Americas, 1 member. The Eastern Mediterranean region, 1. The European region, 2 members. The Southeast Asia region, 1. And the Western Pacific region, 1 member. I shall invite delegates wishing to put forward suggestions concerning these elections to submit them to the Department of Governing Bodies no later than tomorrow, Tuesday, 23rd May, at noon in room E3005, E3005, in order to enable the General Committee to meet to drop its recommendations to the Assembly regarding these elections. Before we turn to the statements by delegations, which will be provided under Item 3, I would like to announce that Committee A will now start its first meeting in Room 20 in parallel with this plenary. I would like to take the opportunity to propose arrangements for the exercise of right of reply, aimed at ensuring a fair, predictable and orderly flow of the conduct of business at our meeting. In particular, I would like to propose to reserve time at the end of each day, time to allow the exercise of the right of reply by those delegations having requested it during the course of the day. In delivering a right of reply, delegations are required and requested to be as brief as possible, taking into account that at these meetings, interventions themselves, to which delegates will then be asking for a right of reply, but the interventions themselves are limited to 3 minutes. If delegations could kindly interpret the word brief relative to the time allotted for interventions themselves, it would be greatly appreciated. In the event of subsequent requests by delegations for additional spoken rights of reply concerning the same matter as previous replies, I kindly request delegations to limit the spoken statements to 30 seconds or less. I trust that this is acceptable, and as I see no objection, it is so decided. Now we shall turn to the general discussion under Item 3. I would like to inform distinguished delegates that the order of interventions will be determined by the list of speakers, which can be accessed on the organization's website and on the WHA 76 app. Regional and group statements shall be no more than 4 minutes and will precede national statements. National statements will be limited to 3 minutes. Traffic light system will be used, and statements exceeded the allotted time regretfully may have to be shortened. Following interventions by Member States, the floor will be given to observers, United Nations agencies, and international organizations. The discussion on Item 3 is now open. I ask for the sake of our interpreters that, whilst keeping within the limit of the 4 and then the 3-minute time frames, to speak at a moderate speed, please. The first 2 speakers on my list are Tonga on behalf of the WHO Western Pacific region and Togo on behalf of the WHO African region. May I invite the first speaker to come to the rostrum. I give the floor to the Honourable Delegate of Tonga on behalf of WHO Western Pacific region. The floor is yours.
Mr. President, Director General, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to deliver this statement on behalf of the Member States of the Western Pacific region. For 75 years, we have come together through the World Health Organization to give our people better, healthier, and longer lives. When the WHO was founded, people in the Western Pacific only lived for around 40 or 50 years. In some part of the region, half of the babies born died before celebrating their first birthday. Our people were threatened by smallpox and polio. Malaria was widespread, and too many people faced hunger and poor access to safe water and sanitation. Today, health and well-being in the Western Pacific look very different. Our people are living at least 3 decades longer, for an average of 77 years. Along with the global eradication of smallpox, our region is free of wild poliovirus, and malaria deaths have been slashed by 88%. Through investments in primary health care, we have brought health services closer to our families and communities. Today, nearly all babies are born with assistance from a skilled health professional, and 90% of children in the Western Pacific receive life-saving vaccinations. Over the past decades, as the burden of some infectious diseases dropped and non-communicable diseases increased, our countries ramped up health promotion and paid more attention to protecting people from tobacco, alcohol, unhealthy diets, and physical inactivity. FCDC measures include plain packaging, which was first implemented in our region, are protecting current and future generations across the Pacific from tobacco's devastating impact. Through the international health regulation and 3 iterations of the Asia-Pacific strategy for emerging diseases and public health emergency, we have strengthened our preparation and response to health emergencies. As a result, during COVID-19, our region maintained relatively low mortality rates while achieving the highest vaccination coverage. We have much to celebrate, but we also recognize the huge health challenges our countries face today and in the future. We are still a long way from achieving the vision of health for all. Too many people miss out on good quality, affordable, and accessible health services. Antimicrobial resistance is a growing threat. Non-communicable diseases are prematurely killing almost 9 in 10 people. Air pollution, climate change, rising sea levels, and more frequent natural disasters pose major threats to health. We know that the next outbreak with pandemic potential may be around the corner, underscoring the importance of our work to strengthen the global health for the pandemic prevention, preparedness, and response. We have the power to save health and well-being for the next 75 years and beyond. In the Western Pacific, we are driving forward our shared vision for the future to make the region the world's safest and healthiest. We must keep working together towards universal health coverage. Strong, well-resourced, and responsive country officers with effective leadership and staff with the right experience and skill set are key partners in these important endeavors. Collaborating with and through WHO and other partners, we will achieve our shared mission to promote health, keep the world safe, and save the vulnerable. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I now ask the delegates of Togo to take the floor. Togo on behalf of the WHO African region, and I ask the delegation of Sweden on behalf of the European Union to be prepared at the rostrum. Togo, the floor is yours.
Merci.
Thank you, President. President, Director General of the World Health Organization, ladies and gentlemen, Togo is honored to address you this morning, speaking on behalf of the 47 member states of WHO's Africa region. And I address you under Agenda Item 3. Firstly, I wish to state that the African region welcomes the holding of this 76th WHA. And we also are delighted to be celebrating the 75th birthday of our organization. We know what has been achieved over the 75 years of WHO's existence for our region, and we intend to continue to build on that and also work in terms of the 3 billion targets and seek to give effect to all the provisions of the current general programme of work. We are delighted to note progress that has been made since 1948, and if we look back, we see that we have come a long way. Life expectancy has gone from 46 to 73 years. We have also seen that smallpox has been eradicated. We have fought against both communicable and non-communicable diseases with considerable success. Support has been provided to member states in implementing the IHRs adopted in 2005. We have also made progress in combating epidemics, including the work that we did on tackling COVID-19. The African region shares the Director General's view that over the past 3 years, the COVID-19 pandemic has led to significant disruption in our systems with significant negative repercussions on service coverage, particularly when it comes to vaccination of children, efforts to combat malaria, tuberculosis, and NCDs in particular. Further, my region notes with great hope that innovative steps have been taken in terms of public health, and this was particularly noticeable last year in 2022, where we saw the first entirely oral therapeutics for multi-drug resistant tuberculosis being used. We also saw the first anti-malaria vaccine we've ever seen. As well as that, we saw that a trust fund was able to release funding for emergency situations, and we've also seen the establishment of a fund to combat pandemics. This is an extremely recent development, as you know. But coming back to the main theme for this 76th Assembly, we endorse the appeal that we have heard here from the Director General in his address to refocus our health systems on primary health care, which is the bedrock of universal health coverage. That being so, we wish to emphasise strongly the need to step up reform that has already been embarked upon within WHO. Our purpose is to build a strong, efficient and robust global health architecture. For its part, the African region remains open to providing support as required for initiatives that will help to bring that about. In our view, particular attention will have to be paid to proposals that are intended to resolve the recurring and priority issue of health equities. Equity is vital, both when it comes to pandemic prevention, also pandemic preparedness, as well as in recovery and response phases, that is to say, recovery and response to health disasters, and post-pandemic recovery efforts. We wish once again to congratulate Dr. Tedros for all that he has achieved, and we encourage him to continue to provide the support needed by member states in order to allow them to attain the 3 billion goals. We need to have a particular focus on states in Africa because our people are paying the highest price for health risks today. I thank you all for your kind attention.
Thank you. I now invite and give the floor to the delegate of Sweden on behalf of the European Union and ask the delegate of Yemen on behalf of the Council of Arab Health Ministers to be prepared at the podium. Sweden, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Director Generals, Ministers, Excellencies, I am delivering this statement on behalf of the European Union and its 27 member states. The candidate countries, North Macedonia, Montenegro, Albania, Ukraine, Republic of Moldova, and Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the potential candidate country, Georgia, align themselves with this statement. The EU thanks the Director General for his address and his leadership. We join the celebration of WHO's 75th anniversary and would like to thank the WHO for its crucial and tireless work. 75 years later, the WHO constitution remains as relevant as ever. As DG pointed out, there has been extraordinary progress in protecting and promoting health. Today, the world is facing serious interlinked global challenges ranging from COVID-19 to food, energy, economic, and triple environmental crisis, hampering the achievements of the 2030 Agenda, and particularly SDG 3. We can only address the health dimensions of these challenges with worldwide cooperation, solidarity, and a fully founded WHO fit for purpose. We stand with all our partners in advancing health based on solidarity, humanity, equity, gender equality, and respect for human rights, and reaffirm our commitment to the 500 million targets. The health emergency in Ukraine resulting from the Russian aggression is alarming and the worst our region has seen in decades. We would like to thank the WHO and its staff for their commitment to stay and deliver in Ukraine, as well as in the refugee and host-receiving countries, for as long as it takes. We condemn Russia's unprovoked, unjustified, and illegal war of aggression against Ukraine in the strongest possible terms, including attacks on health facilities, and we reiterate our full solidarity with Ukraine and its people. It is crucial that we embrace the One Health approach involving all sectors to realize potential win-win situations in achieving health objectives that will benefit both the environment and save millions of lives. Investing in health improves productivity, boosts employment, and increases prosperity. COVID-19 is no longer a public health emergency of international concern. However, we reiterate the need for continued leadership at all levels and through multilateral cooperation. WHO has a central role to play to deliver on the SDGs, to provide leadership, knowledge, advice, and technical support to all countries. It is crucial to foster inclusive collaboration between international actors and to counteract fragmentation across the global health architecture, also beyond the emergency agenda, leaving no region of the world behind. The EU is committed to strengthening pandemic prevention, preparedness and response through a revised IHR and an ambitious pandemic agreement that make real difference on the ground. We look forward to successful outcomes at this year's high-level meeting in New York and in support to our work here in Geneva. Finally, the EU acknowledged the inclusive process to develop the draft programme budget, to strengthen country capacity and to push the achievement of the 500 million targets. Reforms on WHO financing, as well as to further increase transparency, accountability, compliance and efficiency, will be crucial for the WHO to deliver high-quality support to all countries. Thank you.
Thank you, Sweden. I ask now the delegate of Yemen to take the floor on behalf of the Council of Arab Health Ministers, and I ask the delegate of Azerbaijan on behalf of the non-aligned movement to be prepared at the rostrum. Yemen, you have the floor.
السيد رئيس الجمعية، السيد المدير العام، السيدات والسادة رؤساء الوفود.
President, Director General, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates, I wish to greet you all on behalf of the Council of Arab Health Ministers. We wish to begin by thanking the Director General for his address, and we commend the achievements that have been made by WHO since he took over at the helm of this organization. We also wish to thank the Secretariat and the chair of the Executive Board for all of their work. It is our hope that the work that has been done will allow us to achieve the lofty ambitions we have set ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, all of the work that has been done in seeking to respond to COVID-19 has shown the need that exists for countries to work together. We now need to draw lessons both from our successes and from our failures. For that reason, the working group on emergency response is a group that is playing an extremely important role today, and many Arab countries were successful in combating COVID and other illnesses, but we still have serious problems, particularly problems with polio, and this is largely because of instability. It is vital that we work together. We need to work together in the health sectors, and we need to work closely with other sectors also. Education is particularly important. There's a clear causal link between health and certain other sectors, and we need to ensure that we can fight against morbidity and mortality caused by water and vector-borne diseases. This means that we have to work in partnership with many others. We know there are also problems today because of climate change and CO2 emissions, which are driving climate change, and we therefore need to do more to build a healthy and clean environment. This is important alongside all of our efforts to establish health security. Many Arab countries find themselves in situations of conflict and instability, and clearly this has a knock-on effect on health systems in those countries. Indeed, health systems are often hit very hard by conflict and instability. We need then to work in that area also to provide a coordinated response to the challenges that we face, and particular needs are experienced by the Palestinian peoples because of the occupation of their territories, and we need to reach out to them in solidarity. We know that more needs to be done to ensure that appropriate health coverage can be provided in the occupied territories, and we call upon WHO and in particular the ICRC to work in particular to ensure that they fully shoulder their responsibilities with reference to Palestinian prisoners of war. We wish also to highlight the suffering of people in Golan, and we wish to emphasize the fact that the occupation there is preventing WHO from providing the assistance that is so urgently required by Syrian people in that part of the world. We recognize that there are huge problems in many parts of the world today, and particularly in Somalia, and we need to do more to ensure that the situation does not further deteriorate there. This includes, in particular, appropriate health assistance being provided to displaced persons. Technical support in Arab countries is really vital. It is needed to help Arab countries to build their own capacity to respond to health challenges. It's also important to work on capacity building in terms of technology and also research and development. Countries that are suffering so much today from exceptional circumstances really need assistance, and I'm thinking in particular about Sudan, where there is a need to support the health systems and to support hospitals. In conclusion, let me state that I hope that our work here will be fruitful and will assist us in improving the health systems in all of our countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now ask the delegate of Azerbaijan on behalf of the non-aligned movement to take the rostrum, and I ask the delegate of Cabo Verde to be, on behalf of the community of Portuguese-speaking countries, to be prepared at the rostrum.
Mr. President, I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of the non-aligned movement. At the outset, on behalf of non-member states, I want to use this opportunity to congratulate the WHO Director General and his team on the occasion of 75th anniversary of the founding of the World Health Organization. Reiterating our strong commitment to the purposes and the founding principles of the NAM and the World Health Organization Constitution, NAM member states stress the urgent need to ensure the right of everyone to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. NAM welcomes the determination of the WHO that COVID-19 is now an ongoing health issue which no longer constitutes a public health emergency of international concern, and the movement stands ready to cooperate with the WHO on long-term management of the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic. NAM has played a key role in mobilizing and strengthening global efforts to address the impact of the pandemic through, inter alia, initiating a special session of the UN General Assembly in response to the COVID-19 pandemic in December 2020, and the adoption of resolutions titled Ensuring Equitable, Affordable, Timely and Universal Access for All Countries to Vaccines in Response to the COVID-19 Pandemic by the Human Rights Council and the General Assembly, as well as the launching of the database of medical and humanitarian needs of non-member states in response to COVID-19. NAM welcomes the efforts of countries which have donated COVID-19 vaccines and actively encourages further sharing of vaccine doses by all countries in a position to do so. In this context, we appreciate and support the work of the COVAX facility and other constructive related initiatives to ensure affordable, equitable, universal and timely access to COVID-19 vaccines for all. NAM expresses strong condemnation and the promulgation and application of unilateral coercive measures against member states of the movement that are applied in violation of the Charter of the United Nations and international law, and further express our support in accordance with international law to the states affected by such measures, urging the international community to adopt urgent and effective measures to eliminate the use of such measures, with a view to ensure the effectiveness of national responses to COVID-19 pandemic. NAM welcomes the summit-level meeting of the NAM contact group in response to COVID-19 on post-pandemic global recovery, which was held on 2nd March 2023 in Baku, Azerbaijan, under the chairmanship of His Excellency Mr. Ilham Aliyev, President of the Republic of Azerbaijan. NAM requests the WHO member states, relevant international organizations and specialized agencies, in accordance with their respective mandates, to stress the importance of the health conditions in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem, and in the occupied Syrian Golan, by ensuring a functioning health system and to provide the necessary support and assistance to the Palestinian people and to the Syrian population, including through implementing all relevant WHO decisions and reports recommendations. The NAM member states reiterate their commitments to achieving universal health coverage and health-related SDGs by 2030 to ensure health security and more resilient health systems that could provide a timely response to health emergencies, particularly through integrated surveillance, building long-term capacities, and promoting progressive self-reliance strategies. In conclusion, the non-aligned movement counts on the solidarity of all states at this 76th session of the World Health Assembly to prioritize effective responses and to explore and adopt appropriate measures to ensure that the world is prepared for future pandemics. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now ask the delegates of Cabo Verde to take the floor on behalf of the community of Portuguese-speaking countries, and they ask Albania on behalf of member states of the Southeastern Europe Health Network to be ready at the podium. Cabo Verde.
Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, dear ministers, dear everyone, it is an honor to bring this intervention on behalf of the community of Portuguese-speaking countries. We'd like first and foremost congratulate WHO in the occasion of this 75th anniversary, and to express in particular our support for the commitment and leadership of its Director General, Dr. Tedros, displayed during his term. We recognize with a lot of pleasure that throughout his history, the actions of WHO has been guided by the principles of its charter, of its constitution, that the highest standard of health is a right of all, without discrimination of gender, race, religion, migration statute, political beliefs, and social or economical conditions. We highlight that the very understanding within the WHO of the relationship between health and the wider context of societies has been changed. The political declaration of Rio on social determinants of health emphasized the importance to be given to the social conditions as health determinants. At the same time, health exercises a cross-cutting role in the reach of the objectives of sustainable development and in the achievement of the 2030 agenda. Without health, there is no development. And without development, there is no health. We have fought, understanding that WHO has been in the forefront to fight outbreaks, epidemics, and pandemics, from malaria to smallpox, polio, Ebola, tropical diseases, HIV, AIDS, and more recently, COVID-19. The emergency program of the organization has contributed to supply a valuable support to countries to respond to different types of health emergencies around the globe. The fight against non-communicable diseases and the promotion of health has also been ever present in its agenda. In these, it's important to highlight mental health that has been many times left behind, allowing stigma and discrimination. WHO has also worked to support the efforts of the countries to strengthen the national healthcare systems based on primary healthcare to boost towards the global or universal healthcare, and has also taken forward great efforts to promote equitable access to health care technology projects that are indispensable to ensure health for all. The member states of CPLP of the Portuguese-speaking countries would like to pay tribute and recognize all these important initiatives and to stress its very condition that WHO will continue taking a central role in global health. We are now at a crucial moment of the history of this organization. COVID-19 is not anymore considered a public healthcare emergency or international concern, but will remain a public health issue. At the same time, we have in the scope of the WHO two processes that are ongoing in our parallel and aim at redefining the normative framework internationally in health emergencies and pandemics. We consider of great importance that the discussions that are ongoing should be guided under equity and transparency values to fill in the gaps and provide access to vaccine therapies and diagnosis in other medical products that have observed in the last pandemic. Within this scenario, CPLP has taken forward the health dialogue. In the fourth meeting of Ministers of Health in March this year in Rwanda, we have approved the strategic plan of cooperation in health of CPLP to proceed in a coordination towards the implementation of strategies to achieve the sustainable development, good governance in the national healthcare systems of global health. And to close, CPLP reiterates its support to WHO and aims at continuing its work in several areas of action, including cooperation and assistance to the member states, especially the developing countries, in the framework of the 2030 Agenda towards the sustainable development. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. I now ask the delegate of Albania on behalf of the member states of the Southeastern Europe Health Network to take the floor, and I ask Vanuatu on behalf of the Pacific Island countries to be prepared at the rostrum. Albania.
Thank you, Mr. President, Excellencies, colleagues, and friends. I have the honor to speak on behalf of the 9 member states of the Southeastern Europe Health Network who have aligned themselves with this statement: Albania, Bulgaria, Bosnia and Herzegovina, the State of Israel, Republic of Moldova, Montenegro, the Republic of North Macedonia, Romania and the Republic of Serbia. I'm thrilled to share with my colleagues that under Albanian presidency, ministers of health of the CEN member states expressed steady and strategic commitment to the network through the Belgrade Pledge endorsement, a commitment to keep health and well-being at the top of the political and investment agendas, while promoting united actions and coherence among member states and partners in implementing the technical areas for action. We strongly believe that the regional strategic documents complements and narrows regional particularities in the efforts to implement WHO global and regional agenda to achieve the SDGs 2030 targets, as well as to accelerate the progress in closing the gap related to health outcomes in the Southeastern Europe region with the European Union. The past year has been marked by several key actions promoted and implemented by the Southeastern Europe Health Network Secretariat. One in particular worth mentioning at the global stage is the strengthening capacities of the middle and senior management within the health diplomacy course. The last 2 years of the COVID-19 outbreak has only served to emphasize how important health is to social, economic, and political stability. Participants from our countries are now equipped to bring value to the international discussions. For the last 22 years, CE Health Network has been prioritizing mental health. Just 2 weeks ago, a regional meeting on mental health was organized in Bosnia and Herzegovina. It provided a platform for stakeholders to review the achievements in the last 2 decades and discuss future mental health regional activities. Another priority directly impacting human health has been focusing on pharmaceutical care improvement. The activity has been implemented with the Council of Europe Directorate of the Quality of Medicine and Healthcare. The CEN member states are to discuss and to take action to improve the working method for health professionals involved in the prescribing, dispensing and administering medicine, ultimately aim to improve a patient's quality of life. Throughout the Albanian presidency, the CEN Secretariat has been supporting along the WHO the efforts to strengthen emergency response in the CE region. It is my great pleasure to announce that Albania will be hosting the 46th CEN plenary meeting next week in Tirana to discuss cross-sectorial and all-society collaboration for better health system resilience and in particular to improve vaccine acceptance. I would like to use this occasion and express true gratitude to the World Health Organization and in particular to its European Regional Office and our Regional Director, Dr. Hans Kluge, for his steady support to the scene. In the same spirit, I would like to convey our sincere appreciation to the Director General, Dr. Tedros, for the support to the Southeastern European region in advancing health system resilience and closing the regional inequality gaps. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. I ask now Vanuatu to take the floor on behalf of the Pacific Island countries, and I ask Lao to be prepared to speak on behalf of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations at the rostrum. Vanuatu.
Honorable Ministers, distinguished guests and colleagues, Maori, Malo, Elele, and hello on behalf of the 21 island countries and areas that make up the Pacific. Humanity was still reeling from a war whose devastation reached island villages on the other side of the globe when 3/4 of a century ago, representatives from around the world came together to launch an ambitious project. No more death and destruction, they said. Let's create a better future where everyone, no matter who they are and where they are, can live full, happy, and healthy lives. And so WHO was born. However, those that day could not have envisioned just how much has been achieved since. There have been giant strides in health in the Pacific thanks to the efforts of countries, communities, and partners like WHO. Yours has been eliminated in almost every Pacific Island country. Indigenous polio has been gone from the Pacific since 1989. And more recently, we eliminated trachoma as a public health problem in my country, Vanuatu, in 2022. However, health is merely the absence of disease, and there are many other indicators of success. Take the 119% increase in the number of doctors in the Pacific over the past decade, for example. Nurses have similarly increased by 14%, and midwives by 48%. All Pacific Island countries now have their own laboratories capable of testing for COVID-19 and other diseases. And we have kept countless citizens alive through the pandemic, thanks to preparedness, partnerships, and high uptake of vaccines. But we still have a long way to go, particularly for hard-to-reach populations, such as those living on outer islands. Non-communicable diseases are stealing both life years and quality of life from our people. Climate change is already causing death, illness, and injuries, and yet existing funding mechanisms are too difficult to access or do not adequately address the needs of small island countries, even though we contribute so little to the problem and are so heavily affected. There aren't enough health workers to start with, and we are losing too many to out-migration. And while we may be emerging from this pandemic, we know another will follow. So let's devise more effective approaches to tackle NCDs so that our young people can grow up healthy. Let's reach out beyond the health sector with the win-win solutions required to limit the health impacts of climate change. Let's use a combination of new technology and local low-tech solutions to bring life-saving healthcare to everyone, everywhere. Let's make sure we have the skilled workforce we need so that our people can receive the care that they need. And let's show off our health systems so that they can contribute serving patients in the face of climate change and future emergencies. We look forward to working with you all as we build on the legacy of our predecessors. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I ask the delegate of Laos on behalf of the Association of Southeast Asian Networks to take the floor, and I ask the Russian Federation on behalf of the State Union of Belarus and the Russian Federation to be prepared at the rostrum.
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I have the honor to deliver this statement on behalf of ASEAN member states. As representative of a region that is home to over 650 million people, we recognize the urgency and significance of collaborating closely in our effort to safeguard the health and well-being of our population, in line with this year's WHA theme, Saving Lives and Driving Health for All. First, we acknowledge the importance of international cooperation and solidarity in combating COVID-19 pandemic and future health threats. The ASEAN region has demonstrated resilience and unity in responding to the crisis and moving forward recovery, guided by the strategy and implementation plan of the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework. We remain committed to strengthening the regional health architecture beyond COVID-19 and strengthen prevention, preparedness, detection, and response to public health emergencies and threats with health impacts. We are further mobilizing resources toward expanding regional funding mechanism for COVID-19 and other emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases, from COVID-19 ASEAN Response Fund to ASEAN Emergency Health Fund. We also endeavor to operationalize the ASEAN Center for Public Health Emergencies and Emerging Diseases, the ASEAN Biodiaspora Virtual Center, and the ASEAN Institute for Disaster Health Management. We also highlight the need to strengthen genome sequencing and vaccine development capacities and support efforts to accelerate this at national and regional level. A discussion on possible establishment of ASEAN manufacturing R&D hub for vaccines, therapeutic, and diagnostics is also currently underway. Moving forward, as we know the increased interconnectedness of human, animal, and environmental health, we strive to better prepare to save lives through the One Health approach. The ASEAN Declaration on One Health initiative was adopted by the ASEAN leaders just last week. The initiatives include the establishment of ASEAN One Health Joint Plan of Action and a One Health network to strengthen ASEAN collective efforts in this area that reflect the region's needs and priorities. ASEAN also looks forward to the concrete and successful outcomes of the SDG Summit and the high-level meeting of health-related issues at the UN later this year. ASEAN member states are committed to ensuring that equitable and effective outcomes are achieved through the Intergovernmental Negotiating Body to draft and negotiate a convention, agreement, and other international instruments under the Constitution of the World Health Organization. Mr. President, we reiterate that ASEAN resilience is a key priority for the region and in a highly evolving regional and global environment. We have therefore underscored the necessity for ASEAN to be forward-looking, to anticipate and address emerging challenges. In this regard, we are determined to make Southeast Asia the center of regional economic growth and an engine of global growth through robust cooperation, including in the health sector. I thank you, President.
Thank you. I now ask the delegate from the Russian Federation on behalf of the State Union of Belarus and Russia to take the floor, and I ask the delegate of Egypt on behalf of the WHO Eastern Mediterranean region to be prepared at the rostrum.
Distinguished colleagues, it is an honor for me, on behalf of the Union State of the Russian Federation and Belarus, to greet member states of this organization and all of the WHO staff. And I wish you all a very happy birthday in marking the anniversary of this organization. I also note the role it has played in improving health for all throughout this planet. We wish the organization and member states every success in further development and achieving the goals that have been set, foremost among them the SDGs. We note that the recent COVID-19 pandemic was an unprecedented challenge and it revealed many shortcomings in our systems. However, Unlike the case in the past, when we really needed cohesion, unity, mutual help, and a refusal to indulge in egotistical or selfish practices, some countries prefer to point fingers and to politicize the situation. However, despite all of the difficulties, the world was able to cope with this severe blow and to save millions of lives. This became possible only because of mutual support and cooperation. We particularly commend the work of the People's Republic of China, and we commend their timely and efficient response to the pandemic and the great support that they provided to states in need. We cannot ignore another very serious issue, that is to say, corruption in pharmaceutical giant companies, efforts to restrict the market for medicines, to create some kind of elite club in which many countries are simply not able to get access to the drugs that they need at acceptable prices. We also note growing concern about the safety of pre-qualified vaccines. This is something that needs to be studied very carefully, and we need to reach appropriate conclusions and to improve the procedures for releasing vaccines onto the market. Now we have overcome the acute phase of the crisis, but we are now faced with the problem of the global social and economic post-COVID recovery. First and foremost, this is an issue for developing countries, not so much for the golden billion. This means, more than ever, we need solidarity. We need to reject the sectoral interests of individual groups of countries. We need to overcome global inequalities. We need free and equal access to technology and research for all. And many countries simply cannot enjoy that access because of unjustified sanctions and corporate lobbies. The Russian Federation and the Republic of Belarus provide assistance and are ready to cooperate with all countries on the basis of the principles of solidarity, equal rights and respect for international law, as we seek to find mutually acceptable decisions to create a positive dynamic for sustainable development and to expand international cooperation on global health in order to prevent future pandemics. We are sad to note the alarming notes of ongoing politicization in this organization, and we saw, for instance, a flagrant example of that in the recent decision that the Russian Federation could no longer host a GDO on the prevention of NCDs, a decision taken at a special session of the Regional Committee on the 15th of May this year. That office was funded by Russia, and it successfully provided assistance to countries in need in terms of fighting against the burden of NCDs for 10 years. The decision taken runs against the spirit of cooperation as well as all of the provisions that are embodied in the WHO Constitution. Here we have seen that it's been possible to close something just because of the narrow interests of a small group of countries. Another very serious issue is the way that the Secretariat of WHO is seeking to introduce the concept of third sex to WHO documents. This is something that's been agreed upon by the collective West, but it is an effort to impose upon Africa, Asia, Eastern Europe and the Middle Eastern countries a way of life that is alien to their own way of living and behavior. The overwhelming majority of member states of WHO do have a legislative basis that recognizes two sexes, male and female. And this is also what is enshrined in terms of international documentation, where if you look at UN documents, it is the traditional understanding of men and women that is upheld, and the idea of a third sex is not agreed upon by member states, and it is not supported by the global international community. Therefore, the concept of a third sex runs against the ethnic, cultural structure of many countries, religious ethics, national traditions, and basic societal norms of most member countries of WHO. We are therefore concerned about this. We're also concerned about possible efforts to denigrate the significance of the family and traditional family values. Thank you.
Thank you. I now ask Egypt, on behalf of the WHO Eastern Mediterranean region, to take the floor.
Excellencies, Ministers of Health, Head of Delegations, Director General, I am pleased to deliver this statement on behalf of all Member States of the Eastern Mediterranean region. We are proud to join everyone in this Assembly in celebrating 75 years of the WHO. The organization has played a critical role in saving lives and improving the health of millions of people in our region and across the world. Together, we have made great progress in advancing the public health agenda in our region over the last few decades. Many diseases have been eliminated. Maternal and child mortality rates have decreased significantly, and millions of lives have been saved through immunization and other essential public health initiatives. In just the last 2 years, almost 900 million COVID vaccine doses have been administered to our region. We thank the WHO workforce and many partners who helped to make this and other achievements possible. Unfortunately, our region continues to face huge challenges, long-standing conflicts, and other emergencies in many of our countries that have weakened health systems and delayed progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals, and ours is also the only region where wild poliovirus remain endemic. As COVID-19 showed so clearly, public health emergencies in one country or region can escalate rapidly and threaten global health security, so no one is safe until everyone is safe. Now that we are finally emerging from the pandemic, the need for the organization to accelerate its support to our countries and to build stronger and more resilient health systems. This is essential to achieve our ultimate goal and universal health coverage, eradicate polio, and ensure that we are all well prepared for emergencies and maintain regional health security. We also need strong coordination and effective support from the organization and partners to tackle the ongoing epidemiological transition and rise in rates of non-communicable diseases in our region. And we need a more innovative approach to strengthen health systems, promote health, and achieve healthier population. As member states, we commit to increase investments in public health infrastructure and preparedness. We have learned that the cost of not investing can be high indeed. We look forward to working together for another 75 years of better health and well-being, and we call on all our partners to commit to the vision of health for all and by all. We look forward to a fruitful discussion in the coming days, and I thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the group statements. We will now go on to the member state statements. May I remind the delegates that member state statements are to be 3 minutes in length, and may I ask you to cooperate with keeping within this time frame. First to take the floor will be Germany, followed by Norway. Germany, you have the floor.
Dear Director General, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, first of all, Germany fully aligns with the statement which was delivered on behalf of the EU, and we thank you for the clear message that was sent. The COVID-19 pandemic has clearly shown that global health challenges need to be addressed in solidarity, in cooperation, and with mutual support. Without such mutual support, it will not be possible to address future pandemics. WHO has shown the leadership that is needed and was expected if we work in solidarity, and I would like to point out that without WHO's leadership, without that extraordinary work, millions of people would have died additionally. So let me express on behalf of the German government that our gratitude, our major gratitude, we will never forget the leadership that was provided in these crucial days. COVID-19 is no longer an emergency of pandemic proportion, but we shall not forget that it is still with us. New episodes, new variants can come. Many people still suffer from the consequences of COVID. They'll suffer from long COVID. And we also have to take into consideration that our children and young people, they will most likely suffer from repeated episodes. We currently do not know, but we need to know what repeated episodes mean for young people in the future. We have research to do, and we have to protect people. But this only shows how important it is to prevent future pandemics. And there is only a small gap when an outbreak can still be prevented to become a pandemic. For that, we have to be prepared. I think that today's meeting is a unique opportunity for us to work on that prevention, and therefore I'm very glad that WHO yesterday, in its leadership again, created a new network which will work together, the GHEC network, a network of already existing institutions which work together in a closer form. So rather than reinventing the wheel, coming up with new institutions, we bring together the institutions that we have and make them more workable. We make them work better. I would also like to point out that the newly established pandemic fund will be a major new resource. It will work together with WHO. It will provide money, and it will provide money for a new generation of pandemic researchers and pandemic fighters. It is what I would call the type of Fridays for Future workforce in pandemic control. It is a very good idea. It is something that was established together with WHO, and I would like to express my personal gratitude in particular to Jeremy Farrar, who is in the room here, who was one of the creators of this idea. Jeremy, thank you for this leadership, which is necessary, and it is clearly a strengthening of WHO that Jeremy is now working for WHO. Let me point out that WHO is only as strong as we make it, and WHO needs more assessed contributions. WHO does not have to sing for its lunch. This is not the way it should work. The WHO needs money on which it can rely, which is spent for foreseeable purposes. So therefore, Germany fully supports the pledges for WHO, but also will continue to support an increase in assessed contributions for WHO. Let me finish up in saying that 75 years WHO, if it wouldn't be there, it would need to be invented today. So it is really an institution that we cannot do without. It will be with us for the increasing challenges, and therefore what we decide today, in particular with the pandemic treaty, will define the future of millions of people to come. We owe it to them that we are sincere in that preparation. So thank you for this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to this important meeting for which we have convened today. Thank you for your generous attention.
Thank you very much. I now ask the delegate from Norway to take the floor. And I see that the delegate of Japan is already at the rostrum because Japan will be next. Norway, you have the floor.
President, Director General, Excellencies, colleagues, it is an honor to address you on the occasion of WHO's 75-year anniversary. We pay tribute to WHO and its staff for their remarkable commitment. Over the past 75 years, we have made WHO a platform of health and solidarity. Let me also address the dire situation in Ukraine caused by Russia's invasion. Norway condemns Russia's aggression in the strongest possible terms. Russia's deliberate attacks on civilians, healthcare facilities, and health workers are flagrant violations of international law, and we will continue to support Ukraine and its people. Ladies and gentlemen, while we are encouraged that much of the world has been able to return to normalcy, we remain cognizant of the continued daily toll of the virus. And as Dr. Tedros mentioned, the pandemic has exposed major weaknesses and risks. Norway therefore prioritizes the ongoing processes to strengthen pandemic preparedness and response. We believe that filling global PPR gaps and correcting global inequities is within our reach, but it will take political will, including bold compromises. We should also remind ourselves that neither the right to health nor effective PPR can be achieved without universal health coverage, including sexual and reproductive health and rights. This Assembly and the UN high-level meeting in the fall should help mobilize the major investments to make up for the lost progress. WHO's own health is necessary for the organization to deliver. Norway remains strongly committed to the last WHA decision to significantly increase the assessed contributions alongside other reforms, including prevention and responses to sexual exploitation, abuse and harassment. This is necessary to assure a WHO fit for purpose for the next 75 years, even more effective, democratic and transparent. Finally, I will end by referring to the constitution of our World Health Organization. The health of all people is fundamental to the attainment of peace and security and is dependent on the fullest cooperation of individuals and states. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now ask the delegate from Japan to take the floor, followed by Argentina.
Dear President, His Excellency Dr. Tedros, Director General of the World Health Organization, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Government of Japan, I honor to make this address at this assembly to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the establishment of WHO. I would like to express my admiration for WHO's efforts throughout its history to protect and promote health for all. I would also like to show my deep gratitude to Director General Tedros for his leadership and the WHO Secretariat for their dedication. We would like to express our deepest sympathy to those affected by the Turkey-Syria earthquake in February this year, and we promise to provide unwavering support to those affected. In addition, Russia's ongoing aggression against Ukraine is a unilateral change of the status quo by force and an outrageous act that shakes the very foundation of the international order. It violates Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity and constitutes a clear violation of international law. We strongly condemn it. Japan will continue to support the Ukrainian government in its efforts to protect the health of its people from threats to public health. As President of the G7 meeting this year, Japan hosted the G7 Hiroshima Summit and the G7 Health Minister meeting in Nagasaki this month. These two meetings emphasized three major agendas which were strengthening prevention, preparedness, and response for future health emergency, contributing to achieving more resilient, equitable, and sustainable universal health coverage, and promoting health innovation with regard to equitable access to medical countermeasures. We announced the G7 Hiroshima Vision for equitable access to MCMs, and also Japan spearheaded launch of the MCM Delivery Partnership for Equitable Access. Moreover, the G7 Global Plan for UHC Action Agenda was released. Japan has expressed its financial contribution in the amount for around $7.5 million from the public and private sectors from 2022 to 2025 to address these global health challenges. Furthermore, the G7 as a whole has highlighted financial contributors totaling more than $48 billion from the private and public sectors. It is imperative to enhance political momentum through discussion in various fora with the aim of promoting global health. In this regard, I am expecting WHO to play a central role in leading this effort. I would also like to emphasize that in addressing global health issues such as infection control, it is important to refer to good example of regions such as Taiwan. that have achieved public health success and to avoid making any geographical vacuum created by leaving specific region behind in order to prevent the spread of infection worldwide. The last President concludes Japan will continue to work closely with WHO and other relevant organizations to build a healthier, more equitable, peaceful, and prosperous global society. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now ask the delegate of Argentina to take the podium and to be followed by the delegation from Denmark. Argentina, you have the floor.
Muy buenos días.
Thank you very much, and a very good morning to all Your Excellencies. With 2 fewer international health emergencies, it's an absolute pleasure to be here with you at this time. First of all, allow me to thank and congratulate the World Health Organization for your work over these 75 years. Your work has allowed us together to overcome many challenges in the area of health, which have been detailed by the Director General in his statement yesterday and this morning, where we saw how far we have come, what we have achieved, and especially what we need to continue working on to achieve. Allow me to highlight in particular the leadership of Dr. Tedros, Dr. Ryan, and all of the WHO teams in each country that have helped us face the largest health crisis in the last 100 years. Your work to respond globally to the COVID-19 pandemic, and in particular our region, in cooperation with the Pan American Health Organization as the Americas office that today is celebrating its 120-year anniversary. We saw many difficulties and challenges through the pandemic in multilateral responses to health emergencies, seeing clear obstacles faced to achieve equitable access in critical areas such as vaccines. Although the pandemic has also taught us that from the deepest crises come opportunities. We have increased production in critical inputs, and Argentina was selected as one of the centers for one of the ARN vaccine production centers. We have strengthened vigilance and genomic sequencing in our country, taking leadership in the International Network on Pathogens that was launched on Saturday here in the framework of the Assembly. We also welcome increased access to sexual and reproductive health services in Latin America. This is something that has been promoted by Argentina, and we welcome its incorporation in the agenda this year. With regard to non-communicable diseases, we have strengthened the national regulatory framework, not only with policies to eliminate trans fats, but also with the law for the promotion of healthy food, with the relevant labeling in force in our country. We also have a draft bill relating to the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, looking at economic, agricultural and production aspects. This is a pending task that our country has that we hope to complete this year. We continue to work on the control of transmissible diseases, focusing on tuberculosis, and also the work on antimicrobial resistance with an act that we are very eager to start implementing. Allow me to conclude by referring to a priority on the agenda of health in our country, which is mental health. I'd like to share that on the 5th to the 7th of October, we will be hosting the Mental Health Summit. This will be the first time that this was held outside of Europe, in the Americas and in the Southern Hemisphere, and we are very much looking to host you to hear about experiences and lessons learned in this area. We have an opportunity, but also an undeniable responsibility to sustain health as a central pillar on our political agenda. This requires further cooperation, further integration multilaterally and regionally, and in particular more empathy and more solidarity. And this will lead us toward the targets that Dr. Tedros has set us. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. I now ask the delegate from Denmark to take the floor, followed by Slovenia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Excellencies, colleagues, Denmark aligns itself with the statement made on behalf of the European Union. Denmark was a founding member of the WHO in 1946, and our strong engagement in the organization has been uninterrupted. It is an honor for us to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the organization. The adoption of the WHO Constitution with the acknowledgement of health as a fundamental human right was indeed a landmark. For 75 years, the WHO has been directing and coordinating global health, striving to achieve the highest possible level of health for all peoples. The WHO has led and continues to lead many advances in global health, including the eradication of smallpox, polio, and guinea worm disease, the global fight against HIV, malaria, and TB, the continued focus on universal health coverage through strong primary health services, as well as responding to public health emergencies around the globe. Recently, WHO has been at the forefront of the global response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The fact that COVID-19 is no longer a public health emergency of international concern is truly a milestone. The WHO was founded shortly after the Second World War. Sadly, today, around the world, we still see widespread wars and conflicts with major impacts on public health, including as direct victims of war and through attacks on hospitals, clinics, and healthcare personnel, with disruption of access to health services. Denmark applauds and strongly supports the WHO in its important work in emergencies. During this World Health Assembly, we will face many important issues. Denmark looks especially forward to the adoption of the resolution on the health of indigenous peoples. It will be a major step forward. We also hope to see progress on the global efforts to secure sexual and reproductive health and rights. Everyone should have the right to decide over their own body, including access to safe abortion. Lastly, Denmark hopes to see a stronger focus and an increased investment in mental health around the world. Globally, we see worsening of mental health, especially in children and adolescents. Improving mental health begins with the recognition of mental health being equally important to physical health. Yesterday, the DG quoted former Director General Halfdan Mahler, a Dane, and I'm sure that Dr. Mahler would have appreciated the theme for this World Health Assembly, saving lives, driving health for all. We owe it to the visionary leaders of the past and to each other to step up efforts. By working together within the WHO, we will reach new milestones and we will continue to improve health for all. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Followed by Brazil.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Slovenia aligns itself with the statement of the EU and its member states. Dear Director General, WHO has always played a pivotal role in advancing global health, and it has contributed to some of the greatest achievements in human history. This inspires us with hope that we will find solutions for the challenges of today and those to come. The ongoing health emergencies have already forced us to strengthen global cooperation and to start processes to further improve our preparedness and response. We are proud of our organization, and we commend you, Dr. Tedros, and your entire team for tireless efforts in responding to permanent crises. We understand that we are asking a lot. We want WHO to be the central organization in global health, evidence-based, value-driven, transparent, and accountable. While maintaining the normative function of the WHO, we want to improve implementation of agreed decisions and are about to adopt a budget proposal in which most of the funding is allocated to country work. This is the right move. However, it is important to understand that in implementing it is us, member states, walking the talk. Investments will be needed and political will to, for example, adopt evidence-based policies such as best buys. The COVID pandemic has generated a lot of political attention for health. Investments in health and economy of well-being have been discussed at the highest economic fora. Promising, but the answers to challenges such as how to ensure and retain health workforce are still to be found. More than 70% of the workforce in health are women. We must involve them better in decision-making and consider their needs as mothers and carers of the families. In this regard, the Bucharest Declaration was an important milestone. In developing innovative solutions and good practices, we see great potential in WHO initiatives such as Small Countries Initiatives and Southeastern European Health Network, where countries with similar interests seek solutions together. When it comes to identifying and addressing the needs of those most vulnerable, involving and empowering civil society is key. We are very appreciative, Dr. Tedros, to the work done in social participation and youth involvement. Let me conclude by congratulating the WHO on its 75th anniversary and expressing our gratitude for its leadership and for giving us opportunity to work together towards a healthier, more equitable and sustainable future for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Slovenia. I now ask Brazil to take the floor, followed by the delegation from China. Brazil.
Your Excellency, Dr. Tedros Adhanom, Director General of the World Health Organization. I'd like to greet all the staff of this organization, the Excellency, President of this session, dear colleagues, dear ministers, all of you. It is a great honor to come to this podium and in behalf of Brazil to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the WHO. I bring a special greet from the President Lula of Brazil, who would like to acknowledge the organization for its history and for the leadership throughout the pandemic. The great potential of the organization lies in its capacity of tackling the challenges of today while anticipating the future challenges. It is important to learn our lessons from the pandemic that has left 6 million deaths and 700,000 of those in Brazil, with a severe impact in healthcare systems, in mental health, in economy, and in the very social fabric. We will need national healthcare systems that are more prepared for the upcoming emergencies that will certainly come, and to respond to latent problems throughout the pandemic. I'd like to say that Brazil is back, which means the resume of our agenda defending equity in health, the culture of peace, and the multilateralism, which is fundamental at this time. We'll need to tackle the challenges of the climate change and their impacts in health. We have to remember that more than half of the time to reach the SDGs have come by. And despite some challenges, as the ones that have shown by Dr. Tedros today, we are in a large part of the world in a situation that is worse than what we saw before COVID-19. So we need at this moment to strengthen substantially the healthcare surveillance systems and the healthcare systems as a whole. We will need more innovation, transfers of technology, and funding towards more equitable healthcare systems. In terms of artificial intelligences and advances in health, those are crucial tools to be accessible and ethically guided. We must rethink the production of strategic inputs to ensure the equitable access throughout the world. We need to work to guarantee inequalities, and within those, the equality of access to benefits of the scientific knowledge and technological knowledge as well. Inequality is bad for our health. This will require from us a multilateralism that is reinvigorated. We won't reach those objectives without a reform in the global healthcare architecture that make it more agile, cohesive, with the WHO within its core, reducing the inequalities among countries and regions. We must democratize the international healthcare system for the voices of the states and their populations, especially the neglected ones, to be heard. The successful conclusion of the instrument on pandemics and the reform of the international health regulations are decisive elements at this moment. This implicates also in widening our agenda to reduce inequalities and to promote equity. And in that sense, I'd like to stress the proposition that Brazil brings to this assembly of a resolution to defend the respect to the specificities of the health of indigenous peoples. And I'd like to thank all of you that support this request. We trust in the role that WHO may exercise to realize those aspirations and in the leadership of Dr. Tedros Adhanom. Brazil is back to add its voice and its actions towards the defense of health, equity, justice, and international solidarity. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I ask the delegates from China to take.
I'd like to thank the representatives of China to take the floor and inform the plenary that statesman from China. The floor.
Your Excellency Minister Feng, President of the Assembly, Director General Tedros, Ministers, colleagues. First of all, I would like to begin by congratulating Mr. Feng, on his election as a President of the Assembly. China highly appreciates WHO's leading role in global health architecture over the past 75 years. We thank the WHO's outstanding efforts to promote UHC and improve health equity. And we will continue to firmly support WHO's leading and coordinating role. Chinese President Xi Jinping stressed to put people and their lives first, and the Chinese government has put people's health high on the strategic development agenda. We have promoted the Healthy China initiative in a comprehensive manner and deepened healthcare reform. Through our relentless efforts, we have made the following achievements. First, we have built the world's largest healthcare service system, providing residents with comprehensive full life cycle healthcare services. 90% of urban and rural families in China can reach their nearest medical centers within 15 minutes. Second, we've built the world's largest medical security system. The basic medical insurance coverage now stands at a high rate, reaching 1.36 billion people, and its coverage rate stabilized at over 95% over the years. China's health service capability is continuously enhancing. Third, we have promoted Healthy China initiative, focusing on key population groups. Special attention has been given to the health needs of key population groups, including women, children, and elderly. China has carried out the Health Poverty Alleviation Project and has helped nearly 10 million families impoverished by illnesses to get out of poverty. Fourth, by effectively coordinating the COVID-19 response measures with economic and social development, China becomes the first major economy to resume growth after the pandemic. Meanwhile, China practices the vision of building a global community with a shared future for mankind and has taken concrete steps to promote health for all in developing countries and to enhance equitable access to healthcare services. This year marks the 60th anniversary of the Chinese government dispatching medical teams to developing countries. Over the past 6 decades, China has dispatched 30,000 medical professionals to 76 countries and regions. 290 million patients get treatment. These efforts have significantly improved the health and well-being of people around the world. China is committed to solidarity and fighting against the COVID-19 pandemic by joint efforts. The Chinese government has donated $50 million to WHO and $100 million to COVAX. We have sent 38 batches of healthcare professionals to 34 countries to fight against the pandemic and provided over 2.2 billion doses of vaccines to more than 120 countries and international organizations. In support of the efforts of developing countries, we are ready to work with the international community to promote exchanges and cooperation in the health sector and to build a global community of health for all. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. We have now completed our list of speakers for this morning's session. A couple of housekeeping notes before we stop for break. Firstly, we have received requests for rights of reply from the Russian Federation as well as from Sweden, and as agreed at the outset of this meeting, the rights of reply will be accorded at the end of the day. I would like to remind you that the Committee on Credentials will meet soon. We'll meet today at 2 o'clock in room 23, the third plenary. Ourselves will reconvene this afternoon at 2:30 with continuation of agenda item 3, and the list of speakers I have will be starting with the United Kingdom. So United Kingdom will be the first speaker when we reconvene. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you very much.